So when I finally beat Starfield for the first time this year, I had plenty of problems with it. It's a generally clunky and cumbersome game with loads of menus, constant inventory management, and very few quality of life things that would streamline that side of the game. To put it bluntly, the leveling system is unrewarding, the combat is decent but, only serviceable. And worst of all is that Starfield is a fast travel simulator. Now that isn't to say that it's all bad. It has the best story of any Bethesda game and the strongest cast of companions that I've seen from any of their games. Overall though, it was a mess, and I was hoping Shattered Space would fix a lot of my issues. I wanted it to still have the engrossing story and great characters while also giving me an actual planet to explore that I can get familiar with. And while it did what I wanted it to do, I think the quality of the overall package and the fact that this costs $30 as a standalone is a bit of a joke, and this is quite disappointing. Now, I generally don't want to just sit here and shit on a game, so I will start with the positives. Finally, we have a full planet to explore. And what I love about it is that it gives you a city similar to the other cities in the game that are well fleshed out. You have all the typical stuff like NPCs walking around, getting into conversations, giving you quests, and I really enjoyed exploring the city. And then you get outside the city and you finally get a lay of the land. You open the surface map and you can see that, oh, there's an unknown location over here. There's not just a single random facility out in the back arse of nowhere. There are many places to explore. And I really started to get a feel for what this planet was all about. Right out the gate, you get a side quest to go to a research facility on top of a mountain. And while this side quest is just typical like walk around the map, it's just brilliant because it gives you a proper layout of the land. You're atop a mountain, you're getting these quests, and then it brings you to every single corner of the map. So as you're going around, you're like, oh, there's the dam over there, I better unlock that for fast travel later. And this is the thing about the base game, is that Starfield was a fast travel simulator. And I don't mind fast travel, because in most Bethesda games you end up just fast traveling everywhere. But at the very least, the fast travel is a reward for already exploring an area, and this gives you exactly that. So from that aspect, it was really positive straight from the start, and the overall art direction of this DLC pack is stunning. It uses purples and blues to create this extremely memorable location. And when you're in the middle of the city and the Citadel is off in the background with the anomalies around it, it's just so cool. And we all saw that in the pre-release footage. It just looks absolutely stunning. Of course, we have to be real, because Starfield at its core isn't an amazing game. It's maybe like, a 7 out of 10. It's decent, but it's not great. So I was expecting this to add to the experience. And don't get me wrong, I didn't set my expectations super high where all of a sudden Starfield was going to be a 9 out of 10 or this was going to improve it drastically. But I was hoping that it would at the very least improve it somewhat. And while obviously it did improve with the exploration, it took away with the story, because the story is nowhere near long enough, fleshed out enough, or even has a single character that I actually cared about. So you land on Varun Kai and there's this shadowy figure that you don't really know what's going on. He was the old leader that was somehow transported to a different dimension, and he's talking about seeing the Great Serpent and asking if we are the Great Serpent. And I think if you've already beaten Starfield, this does actually have some pretty heavy story implications, which I like. But then you get forced to join the religion. And from what I can tell, you don't have any choice in making this decision. You land on the planet, and the only way people will deal or speak with you is if you join House Varun. And I understand, that's just the House Varun customs. But I don't know, there's just something so weird about instantly starting the DLC and then being confronted with something that you would like to think is a choice, but it actually isn't. It got off on a bad foot there. And as you go along the story, the Citadel has been shut off, which is like their main building, and the 3 main houses in the city are all feuding. And this is where the biggest problem lies with Shattered Space. The story is so short that it didn't give you any time to care about the characters. While I think the overarching plot is quite interesting, how they deliver it to you is absolutely off. I praise the main story of Starfield's base game. It's the best Bethesda have ever done. But here they deliver it to you in such a weird way. So basically, you have to go to each one of the main houses and talk to their leaders. And as you go into the room where the leader is, they will be in the middle of a conversation. You'll catch the end of the conversation, and then they'll talk to you. And in general, they're all kind of ruthless, all for following the Great Serpent and doing all the good things for the sake of the religion, and that's cool. But you go in, you ask for their help, and obviously they say, oh yes, we will help you, but you have to help us fix this little squabble that we have. So you go off and do that. But the thing is, you probably spend a combined maybe 30 minutes talking to each one of these characters individually. And at the end, you have to make a big choice on who becomes the next family to lead the place. And it was so poorly done and so not fleshed out that when I was given the choice and it gave me the 3 house names, I forgot which character was which. I knew by the look of them what they did in the story and which one I wanted to choose, but I didn't know their names. And that just sums up this whole story, because even if you have the best writing in the world, you cannot flesh out a character in 30 minutes enough for me to care about them. And then when we're talking about the story, I deliberately went back to before I looped into New Game Plus because I wanted Andreja on my team, because Andreja was part of House of Ruin and I wanted to see how she would interact. And again, it started off on, a pretty positive note where she would say a couple of things. It's more just the typical sort of good versus bad. Andreja is the good character, so anything that you do is bad, she will dislike that. But there was very few good lines about her faith and how she might interact with it, and the amount of times where I went against House of Ruin and following the Great Serpent, and she didn't even react to me, and I'm like, oh, that is just so disappointing, because Andreja was an absolute highlight of the base game. So that was one of the main reasons why I was excited for this, because I thought maybe I'd get loads of cool interactions with Andreja, but it just didn't happen. Maybe it happens in some side quests, but the side quest that I did, again, she didn't really interact with me, and it's just, I don't know, it's just such a shame. What Shattered Space proved to me is that Bethesda can still make decent locations that you might want to explore. It's still not anywhere near their strongest. Like, people compare this to Far Harbor. It's a DLC I've never played, but I've heard a lot of people say a lot of positive things about it. But there wasn't anything super enticing about Vrun and what the planet had on it. It was better than what the base game gave us, but that's not too great of a comparison considering the base game had almost no locations to explore, and that was probably one of the biggest disappointments. So it's almost a case of be careful what you wish for, because I got what I wished for, but unfortunately it just wasn't high quality. And then you're going around the planet and you're using the rover, which they added in a recent update that I never used. And by God, this rover is genuinely one of the worst vehicles I have ever used in a game. It has that same controls of if you've ever played Borderlands, where you use the left analog stick to go forward and backwards and turn, and then you use the right analog stick to properly turn, so the turn is camera based and not left stick based. I think in general, as a control scheme for controlling a vehicle, it's pretty clunky, just it doesn't matter what game you're playing. But when you combine the terrain of this planet, and the wheels will just randomly clip on some random rock, and the car will accelerate, or it will go backwards, or it will go forwards, or trying to go up like a thin mountain passage, which is wide enough for the car just about. Just awful. The only way to successfully move around with a rover is by jumping, and then you have to wait for your boost to respawn, and then just keep doing that, because driving around is absolutely useless. Bethesda have decided to charge $30 or €30 for this, which is absolutely insane. Because yes, I'm sure there probably could be another 10 or 15 hours worth of content there if I wanted to go seek it out and do the side quests. But even though, yes, the planet is pretty okay to explore, I'm just kind of done with it. The story was extremely disappointing. The enemy designs are kind of okay, but in general, this is extremely unoptimized. Basically, the main enemies have this weird sort of warping, effect over them. I don't know what you would exactly call it. It's an anomaly, basically. So they're all shimmery, and they absolutely tank the frame rate. Every single time you look at one, the frame rate just drops. And I'm not sure if this was an issue with my PC. I did play this on my PC and my laptop, but as you're going around the planet in the rover, you just get these micro stutters. Even it was happening when I was streaming, so I just put it down to streaming off the same PC and playing, but then it was happening on my laptop and I wasn't streaming at that point. I'm like, oh my God. I don't like using the word lazy, because I don't think it is lazy. There's loads of content. There's characters, even if they're not great. They obviously did a lot in sort of fleshing out the story of Starfield, or somewhat. And in general, there's a really great art direction here. But overall, I don't think I'd buy this DLC pack. Maybe it's one small step in the right direction. If we are here in 3 or 4 years when Starfield's life cycle is finished, and Bethesda release, let's say 2, 3, 4 more of these sort of DLCs, and you could probably buy them in a season pass for, let's say, $60 or $70, and you're given 3 or 4 of them, then it's okay, they might have improved the overall experience of Starfield. But right now, I'm honestly leaving Starfield now with a worse taste in my mouth than I did when I finished the base game only a couple of weeks ago. So that is Starfield Shattered Space. Extremely disappointing. I would love to know what you think down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, there'll be loads of more RPG content. I'll see you all on the next video.